Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're taking a deep dive into, well, a market you might not think about every day, but it's clearly significant and growing.
That's right, the global endopeptidase market.
Exactly. And if you're wondering, what on earth is an endopeptidase, just think of them as a type of enzyme.
Uh-huh. Crucial things used in lots of biological processes and, well, industries too. Healthcare, pharma,
Even food production, manufacturing, they pop up in quite a few places.
they do. And this deep dive, it's powered by some specific source material we've got here. Data, insights from cognitive market research. It came via Global Industry Pulse.
Right. So we basically got this stack of data, and our job really is to figure out what it all means.
Exactly. We want to work through these numbers together, sort of guide you past the raw data points.
So you can see the clear picture, the scale of this market, its growth around the world.
Think of it as your quick guide to understanding the landscape just based on these figures.
Perfect. So we'll look at the global view first, then break it down region by region, look at the numbers for the past, near future, and projections way out to 2033.
That sounds good. Let's start at the top.
Okay, the global picture. So the source gives us market size for 3 key years. Back in 2021, the global market was valued at about $1.545 billion. That's billion with a B.
Yeah, and that's a pretty solid rise. By 2025, it's up to nearly $2 billion, $1.998 billion specifically.
And looking further out,
The projection for 2033, it's a big jump, over $3.3 billion. $3.339 billion to be precise.
wow. Okay, so more than doubling in value over that, 12-year period?
Pretty much. And the source also gives us that compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, for the whole 2021 to 2033 timeframe.
Right, and that's noted as a steady 6.60%.
Mm-hmm. And what that CAGR tells you is it's not just a one-off bump, right? It indicates consistent, significant growth.
Yeah, averaged out over the whole decade plus, it suggests a really stable expansion globally.
But what's fascinating is how that global story kind of breaks down when you look at the different regions.
Yeah. Okay, so where should we start? North America.
Let's do it. North America.
Oh.
The market there, it went from about $601 million in 2021,
Climbed to over $755 million in 2025.
and it's projected to reach nearly $1.2 billion by 2033, $1,192 million roughly.
And its specific CAGR, the source puts North America at 5.86%.
Right. So you notice that's a little bit below the global average we just mentioned, the 6.63%.
Interesting. And within North America, the U.S. is obviously the big player.
Oh, definitely. Starts around $447 million in 2021, forecast to hit over $854 million by 2033.
And Canada.
Canada is also significant, growing from about $111 million, projected past $234 million in that same period.
But the data specifically calls out Mexico, doesn't it?
It does. It starts smaller, around $42 million back in 2021, but it shows really strong momentum.
Projected to more than double to over $102 million by 2033.
And its CAGR is noted as robust, 7.68%.
Okay, so robust. Based purely on these numbers, that higher growth rate suggests Mexico's piece of this market is expanding, well, noticeably faster than the North American average.
Seems that way from the figures, yes. Now, shall we shift focus? Europe.
Let's head over to Europe. What are the numbers telling us there?
Okay, Europe. Market figures show growth from about $417 million in 2021
Climbing past $533 million in 2025.
and expected to reach around $864 million by 2033.
And the CAGR for Europe.
That's pegged at 6.22%.
Okay, so Europe's growth rate is closer to that global average, just a bit lower than the 6.63%.
Right. And the source breaks it down further, gives us data for several European countries. Germany looks like the largest market listed here.
Yeah, starting around $89 million, projected up over $173 million.
Then you've got the UK, France, Italy, all major markets too. And they're all showing pretty similar, steady growth trajectories in the data.
Steady growth. But what about Spain? I think the source mentioned something specific there.
Ah, good catch. Yes, Spain. The source notes impressive acceleration for its market figures.
Impressive acceleration. What does that look like in numbers?
It goes from about $27 million to over $68 million by 2033. So that specific phrasing, acceleration, it suggests maybe a steeper growth curve in their numbers compared to some others nearby.
Interesting. So established large markets in Europe showing solid growth, but with some, let's say, variations in speed, like Spain's noted acceleration, just based on the data points.
Exactly. Variations within the overall trend. Okay, where to next? Asia Pacific.
Let's do it. Across to Asia Pacific, or APAC.
Right. This region shows a really significant jump from about $335 million in 2021
to over $457 million in 2025.
And hitting $858 million by 2033, almost $860 million.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting when you look at the growth rate. APAC's CAGR.
It's 6.86%.
Okay, so that's actually higher than both North America and Europe that we just discussed.
And slightly above the global average, too.
Right. And the source details some big country contributions driving this. China, for instance.
China shows a really strong surge.
Yeah.
About $112 million, forecast to reach over $308 million.
Big numbers. What about Japan?
Japan's another large market within APAC. Grows from around 60.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Japan's another large market within APAC. Grows from around $65 million to over $143 million by 2033.
And India. The source had specific wording for India, I think.
It did indeed. It explicitly states that India rode the fastest growth path.
Fastest growth path. And the numbers back that up.
Seems so. India goes from about $41 million up to over $120 million.
Okay.
So yeah, that description plus the numbers, it suggests India's market is expanding at a particularly rapid pace.
Right, within an already fast-growing region, according to this data.
You've also got strong growth shown for South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia as a group, Taiwan.
So it seems APAC isn't just a huge market in terms of value, but its collective growth rate, based on this data, is actually outpacing the Western markets listed here.
That's what the numbers suggest, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, moving further south, South America.
Yeah, let's look at South America.
Okay, the figures here show revenue climbing from about $78 million in 2021.
Reaching over $103 million in 2025.
And expected to nearly double from there, hitting almost $180 million by 2033. So $179.978 million.
And the CAGR for South America?
It's 7.13%.
Okay, another region with a high growth rate then. Notably higher than the global average and higher than North America and Europe in this source.
Definitely. Brazil is the largest market listed, climbing from about $32 million to nearly $80 million by 2033.
And others.
Argentina and Colombia also show significant growth in the projections, both more than doubling their market size.
So the picture for South America, based on these figures, is maybe a smaller market overall compared to, say, North America or Europe right now.
But one that's expanding very quickly. That's the story the CAGR tells us.
Makes sense. Okay, two more regions highlighted in the source. The Middle East and Africa. Let's do the Middle East first.
Right, the Middle East. Figures grew from about $69 million in 2021 to nearly $90 million in 2025.
With projections reaching almost $157 million by 2033.
And now, check out the CAGR for the Middle East.
Okay.
It's 7.21%.
Wow, 7.21%. So according to the figures presented in the source, that's the highest regional CAGR.
It is. The highest among all the regions detailed here. Saudi Arabia is listed as the largest market.
Right, rising from about $26 million to over $61 million.
And you've also got Turkey, the UAE, Egypt, showing significant market size and growth too, according to the data.
So the Middle East numbers, they really seem to indicate a region with very strong momentum, lots of potential for rapid market expansion in endopeptidases based purely on these projections.
That's the clear message from these particular figures, yes. Okay, last region covered in this detail, Africa.
All right, Africa, what's the story there?
Market here grew from about $43 million in 2021.
To over $57 million in 2025.
With projections hitting around $87 million by 2033.
$87.15 million.
And Africa's AGR capped.
5.28%.
Okay, 5.28%. So based only on the data provided in this source, that's actually the lowest regional CAGR we've seen among all the detailed regions.
That's correct. South Africa is listed as the largest market within the continent, growing from about $16 million to $31 million by 2033. Nigeria is close behind. Right, so Africa is definitely a growing market. But according to these specific numbers, the rate of that growth appears slower compared to other parts of the world we've looked at, like APAC or South America or the Middle East.
That's the comparison the numbers draw.
Yeah.
So let's try and synthesize this a bit. What does it all mean when you put it together?
Well, it shows an overall global endopeptidase market that's clearly on a significant growth path.
Definitely. More than doubling its size between 2021 and 2033 based on these projections.
But, and this is the key thing from breaking it down, while the growth is global, the speed varies quite a bit by region.
A lot. You see regions like Asia-Pacific, South America, and especially the Middle East showing those higher than average KGRs. That points to faster market expansion there.
And within those regions, specific countries jump out from the source or the numbers, like Mexico's robust KGR, Spain's acceleration, India's fastest growth path.
Exactly. Then you have North America and Europe. They're currently the biggest markets in terms of dollar value.
And they're still growing, absolutely.
But according to this data, at a slightly slower pace than that global average.
And then Africa, still growing, but showing the lowest regional CER among those presented here.
So looking at data like this, breaking down the big global numbers into these regional and country specifics, it really helps you understand the different speeds and scales.
Yeah, how different parts of the world are participating in and contributing to this global market. It's all based purely on the reported figures, of course.
But it gives you that data-driven snapshot, where the market's been, where it's projected to head, highlighting those key areas of expansion based just on the numbers themselves.
It's a really useful shortcut, I think, to getting a clearer picture than just a single global number.
I agree. Seeing these laid out region by region, country by country, it gives a much richer perspective.
Definitely. So reflecting on this deep dive into the numbers from cognitive market research, here's maybe something to consider. And this is based only on the data points we've just walked through. We saw these significantly different growth rates across continents, right? From Africa's, 5.28% CAGR?
All the way up to the Middle East, 7.21%,
Right.
with APAC and South America also showing really high rates.
Exactly. So the question is, given just those numbers, what might these disparities, these big differences in growth rates imply? What might they suggest about the underlying market conditions or, factors specific to those regions within this particular endopeptidase market?
That's interesting, just looking at how the numbers themselves are behaving differently across the globe.
Yeah, just something to mull over based on the patterns in the data we've explored today.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got some really fascinating material here today.
We do. We're diving into a market you might not thump about much.
Right, the world of endopeptidases. But, the sources show it touches surprising parts of your life.
That's exactly it. We've been looking through these sources, really trying to unpack the dynamics.
And what really jumped out, I think, was just how broad the applications are.
Yeah.
I mean, these enzymes, they're proteins breaking down other proteins, right, from the inside.
Correct. And they're used in, improving the food you eat, for starters.
And developing medicines, even powering biotech research. It's quite the spread.
It's incredibly far-reaching. So our mission today, really, is to take these insights from the sources and sort of distill them for you, break down what the material sees as the key forces.
The drivers, the restraints.
Exactly. And the emerging trends, too. What's shaping the future landscape according to this material?
Think of it as your shortcut to understanding what's really important here, based on what you shared.
Let's do it. So where do we start? The forces pushing things forward.
Yeah, the drivers.
Yeah.
What did the sources highlight most?
Well, pharmaceuticals came up a lot.
Yeah.
The sources make it clear how significant formulations are.
Okay, how so?
Things like drug delivery.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Significant formulations are.
Okay, how so?
Things like drug delivery, protecting therapeutic peptides, in the gut.
So they don't break down too soon?
Precisely. And also managing inflammation, helping with protein digestion for patients. Crucial stuff.
Right, okay. But it's definitely not just medicine, is it? The sources mentioned food, too.
Oh, absolutely. A big push from the food industry.
Like what specifically?
Creating protein hydrolysates, improving dairy texture.
So smoother yogurts, maybe better cheese.
Exactly. And even tenderizing meat. It's all about enhancing, the functional properties, the quality.
Makes sense. And connecting that maybe to the science side.
Yeah, the materials show that the boom in biotech and just fundamental research is a major driver.
How are they used there?
Well, they're described as crucial tools for protein sequencing, developing assays for different markers.
Like diagnostic tests.
Sort of, yeah, and essential for cell analysis in labs everywhere.
And one other area the sources seem to point out was using them as treatments.
Yes, enzyme-based treatments directly. As biologics get more common,
Right.
we're seeing them explored for digestive issues like pancreatitis or celiac disease, using their natural function.
That sounds like a really powerful growth area if the material called it out specifically.
Definitely. But, it's not all easy growth. The market faces real hurdles.
Okay, yeah. Sources didn't shy away from those, did they?
Not at all.
So, looking at those restraints mentioned in the material, what were the big ones?
I'd say one of the main challenges is cost. high cost for production and purification.
Why is that?
Well, the material notes these are complex biotech processes. They need specialized gear, specific conditions.
Which naturally drives up the price compared to, like, simple chemicals.
Exactly. You're making complex biological molecules. It's just hard.
Totally get that. What else?
Then there's stability and storage. The sources indicated they're sensitive.
To things like temperature, pH.
Yeah, exactly. Which impacts shelf life.
Yeah.
Makes storage and transport, tricky and expensive.
It's for getting them around the world, I imagine.
For sure. Keeping them active from factory to final use adds this whole other layer of difficulty and cost.
Okay. Anything else holding things back?
Yes, regulations, strict rules, especially for pharma and food uses.
Approvals take time and money, right?
A lot of time and significant investment. Safety testing, quality control. It just slows down new products getting out there.
And I guess competition is always a factor.
Of course, the material mentioned other types of proteases exist.
Like microbial ones.
Mm-hmm.
Or those exopeptidases.
Yeah, the ones that break proteins from the ends. They might just be better or cheaper for some specific jobs.
Right. So given those challenges, how is the market adapting? What new directions are coming up in the sources?
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, actually.
What cutting-edge trends did the material point to?
One thing noted is growing use in sports nutrition and nutraceuticals.
Ah, okay. Why there?
Well, the sources explain endopeptidases help break proteins into smaller bits, easier to digest peptides.
So like making protein shakes easier on the stomach, better absorption.
That's a key application mentioned. Yeah, people value that in performance foods.
Interesting. What other trends?
Another big one for efficiency and maybe cost is recombinant enzyme technology.
So genetic engineering.
Uh-huh. The material highlighted how it allows for, higher yield, more cost-effective production.
And it often means more stable enzymes too, compared to just extracting them.
Often, yes. That could be a real game changer for tackling some of those cost and stability issues we talked about.
Definitely sounds like it.
And also wider use in research and diagnostics. Protein profiling, complex assays in labs.
Cutting-edge biology stuff.
Exactly. Molecular biology, pathology, they really rely on these enzymes for prepping samples and analysis.
Okay, one more.
And finally, sort of mirroring consumer trends, the sources mention growing interest in microbial and plant-based sources.
Ah, like non-animal sources.
Yeah. As people look more at plant-forward diets, non-animal ingredients, there's more focus on getting endopeptidases from fungi, bacteria, or plants.
So you've got this really complex picture then.
You do. Based on the sources, it's this interplay, powerful growth drivers from all these different industries.
Pharma, food, biotech.
Right. Then these big technical and regulatory hurdles slowing things down.
Cost stability.
And then these innovative trends trying to overcome them or find new niches, recombinant tech, plant sources. It's dynamic.
So let's bring it back. What does all this actually mean for you listening right now?
Well, it means these enzymes, often working totally behind the scenes, they're having a real impact.
How?
They're influencing everything from, say, treatments you might encounter, maybe rely on, to the actual texture or digestibility of the food you eat day to day.
And the basic science that leads to future breakthroughs.
Exactly. And the advancements happening right now in medical and life sciences research, they're foundational.
They really are kind of the quiet, powerful workhorses in the biochemical world.
Indeed. So, given how widespread they are, and often unseen, here's maybe a thought to leave you with.
Okay.
How might these enzyme technologies keep shaping everyday products? Or maybe enable completely new health solutions in ways we haven't even fully imagined yet? Based on all the potential we saw laid out in this material.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.